GM.
GM.
What's up?
We're back in the house.
We're back. Welcome back, Casey.
Thank you so much. It's great to be back in Hong Kong after traveling all over the world. I hope everybody didn't miss me too much. I was listening to the last two episodes just as a listener, and they're just great to hear. I love the content that we're producing. It's great. But definitely one thing I want to mention that if everybody's listening here from Meme Land community, that this is not really a town hall show, right?
Yeah, it's not an alpha show.
This is
Sorry.
not an alpha show, but it was so great to have Ray come on in the last couple of weeks talking a little bit more about the meme coin launch and stuff like that. But definitely, if you want to listen to more Meme Land specific stuff, we really recommend you listen to the guys that were on last week from the Painfully Bullish show, the meme at Meme Land Spaces. The main point for the GM show, this show, is to talk about other projects and what we can learn from them and what is happening around Asia. So to double down on that, what are the ABCs of the GM show, Karen?
Oh, Casey. I think people can't hear you.
Okay,
Oh, but they
great.
can hear me.
Okay, why don't you read what I just said?
Okay, so Casey, just back in Hong Kong. Well, there is we don't want to make the show as just like an alpha show. So this is the main point of the GM show is to talk about other projects and what we can learn from them and what is happening around Asia. So the ABC of the GM show is Asia focused, builder friendly, and cool vibes only. So that's the show. Casey, can you hear me? Oh, you're on mute. Oh no, this is like the first show again. Okay. Meanwhile, he's gonna figure out. I'm just gonna go with the flow. Um, so today we're going to do our pre-show for Token 2049, which is next week in Singapore, and there's so much happening next week. And Memeland is an official media partner of Token 2049 this year, and we have two guests joining us this week to talk about building in Singapore and what to expect next week. So, Casey, are you back?
I am. Can you hear me?
Very,
Very lightly.
um, very soft.
Oh, I'm on my computer now. Microphone.
You guys hear? I think
I got.
I can only.
Oh, this guy says. Joseph says I'm quite loud on YouTube.
There's feedback. Yeah, still can hear.
Uh-oh. Now they say your voice is disappearing. We're in trouble here now. The audio is not working.
Okay, just so we're on it.
Okay. I'm going to keep talking. I don't know if it comes through or not. But yeah,
Very soft.
very soft.
Yeah.
I'm a very loud person, so it's very strange that it's coming out so quiet. Okay, well, my mic is full bar green, so it must be pretty loud. But let's just keep going and then see what happens. As long as the guests can hear us, we're still recording this.
Okay.
Let's hear a quick word from our chairman, though, before we begin.
Sure.
What is discussed on the GM show is not investment advice. We may or may not have ownership interests in the projects we are talking about, but this is not investment advice in any way, shape or form. And this is not Sir David Attenborough.
Okay.
Great. So yeah, we're using this system where we I don't know if everybody knows this, but we're doing a system between streaming live to YouTube and also streaming to Twitter at the same time. So Joseph's there on YouTube saying we're loud on YouTube but quiet on, or vice versa. So let's just run with it and see. Everybody can hear, and we'll edit it for the podcast later. So basically. Before we begin, I just want to make sure that everybody knows that this Stroh's live streams live every Thursday morning, 9 a.m. Hong Kong time. So we appreciate our guests getting up super early in Singapore to be with us today. We're at 10 a.m. in Tokyo and Seoul, where a lot of our friends are this week at the Korea Blockchain Week. And then if you're tuning in from the States, we're at 6 p.m. Pacific time, 9 Eastern. You can listen to here. Hopefully you can listen. We're going to have to play with our audio settings, but Twitter Spaces, YouTube, and Twitch. So while we're still wiggling on this stuff, let's hear a quick word from our sponsor.
Not sponsored by Token 2049. Token 2049 is the premier crypto event, organized annually in Singapore, where founders and executives of the leading Web3 companies and projects share their view on the industry. Expect a wide range of meetups, workshops, hackathons, networking drinks, parties, and Formula One racing next week in Singapore.
Okay, I think Casey, you're back.
I'm back. Okay, good. This is just the old version of just using the MacBook instead of all these fancy mics. Okay, so go ahead.
So this is our token 49, and I'm excited to be in Singapore next week. Casey and I have a panel about Hong Kong and Web3 at Token 49, and we'll be doing our first live GMP in Singapore. Small group of viewers, like hopefully people will sign up, we'll see you there, and we're going to make it work. So hopefully it's not going to be like this.
Yeah, I haven't been back in Singapore in quite a while.
For how long?
It's like 5 years, I think, is the last time I was there. I was looking at some Google Photos. So I hope to find my favorite laksa place there. So give you context why we're doing this, right? There's a lot of stuff happening in Singapore next week. And I want to just talk quickly about some of the places that Karen and I will be at. And I think Ray is coming down as well. So starting on Sunday, we're going to be at this Growth Con at the Marina Bay Sands. So there's this event going on already on Sunday. There's another conference called All That Matters on Monday that we're doing a panel at. Then there's Token 2049. We're doing the GM show live on Thursday morning. There's a meme land parties. There's dinners. There's all kinds of things happening. It's back to back in the Singapore heat. And then there's the F1 on the weekend. And so I think some of the meme land team are coming down as well. So I think it's pretty exciting. I'm also excited to see Luca from Pudgy Penguins will be there, Amanda from Serotonin, Alex from Nansen. A lot of our past guests on the show, I'm finally going to meet them live for the first time, and here in Asia, not in the States or somewhere. Karen, before we bring on our guests, what is the one thing that you need to eat or buy when you're in Singapore?
So I'm definitely visiting the Pokemon Center. And can you guys hear me? I don't know. So I'm definitely going to the Hawker Center as well for the chicken rice. Yeah, so that's my go-to.
Okay, for me, definitely, I love laksa, so I'm going to look for the best laksa stuff. But I'm also a big toy buyer, so there's a Mighty Jack's shop, an XM store, Studio Store, and Action City. Those are the kind of place that I like to check out. If you're from Singapore and watching the show and want to show me around, my DMs are open.
Yeah, show us around.
Yeah, okay, here we go. Let's start the show off with our first guest.
Hello.
Hey guys.
Hey.
Hello. I'm hearing myself speak immediately after I talk.
You sound fine to me.
Weird. I don't. We'll live with it. It's fine.
So Gabe is a fan of the hack from ARC. Members co-founded by one of the first singers from Singapore on the international stage. So, Gabe, can you tell us about what ARC is and what your role is there?
Yeah, sure. And good morning. From Seoul. It's 10 o'clock in the morning. As I was telling Casey, if this was 9 a.m. in the morning Singapore time, I'd probably struggle to be here and everything like that. But I don't look, to be honest, I will still be here. Casey's a very, very old friend, so is Ray. If they ask me to do it, but I have certain limits. Like, please don't ever do the GM show at 8 a.m. For the love of God, please, ever, Casey, if you ever get me back. But yes, ARC, actually, AKA better known as ARC, we're a Singapore-based project. I'm the deputy CEO, AKA the firefighter. I look at a lot of things in the business, and short version for everybody, and I'm sure along the lines we'll talk more about it. ARC is our own reimagination of what a digital members club is. We are a NFT gated project. So everything which we do, whether it's online or offline, anywhere in Asia, is generally token gated. So that means that online we have our own mobile app where our community sits, and offline includes our events. FYI, for Korea Blockchain Week, I think we have something like 42 members. If you include the people in Korea, probably nearly 50 people here at Korea Blockchain Week at the moment for this entire week. And I dare say some of them are actually not listening in right now because they're all bloody hungover. Other than that, thank you guys. Very great to be here.
Great.
Amazing. Glad. Thanks for being here. All right, so this is our Singapore pre-show. So I wanted you to come on the show and kind of tell us, tell the listeners and tell us as well, because we haven't caught up in a while. What's happening in Singapore right now in Web3? Who are the big players? What are people building? What are your members doing in Web3 right now?
Well, who are the big players in Web3? I think that question is a long one because Singapore's a very good mix of different type of personalities, people, and businesses that happens, right? So you've got the crypto side, and then even in the crypto side, you've got DeFi guys, you've got the VCs, you've got the market makers, blah 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 blah. All of that happening as well, right? On the other side, you've also got the guys who are building the NFT space and everything like that. I think one thing's good, and actually we're just talking about it before we came online as well, is that people have just gotten on with it, right? Like bear market, bull market, or whatever bloody animal we're using nowadays. Everybody's kind of like moved on it, right? The VCs have obviously always been active, even though they're not publicly active. They've always been active. The guys on the crypto side, the NFT side also be very active. Do I need to give specific examples of people that are probably active? I don't know. I see a lot right now.
Yeah, go for it.
Yeah, so I see a lot right now, right? I think you see Nelson, BBRC, I was on the show before. I think he's gonna, he just launched a new collection. He's launching a new series of like toys merch, everything like this going on. The Pixelmon guys, who basically are also based in Singapore. Some of them that's in Malaysia. They're also there's a lot of progress there. On the crypto side, you see a lot of launches. Arthur OX as well. He's not the only one. I think he's also started a trend right there. Nansen is going to be launching and making an announcement, right, at Token 2029. I think I think Alex, another bro, is putting a lot of effort, doing a lot of stuff there. Other than that, I think you've got the market makers who's very active. CJ from GSR. You've got Heng and the boys from there, from DWF Labs. You also have his other business partner Eugene, right, who's also leading the charge for tokenized T-bills, this RWA stuff and everything. Open Eden, I believe the project is called as well. Another thing as well, I think on the NFT side, I think Wei Yang from Home Museum is also making good progress. I think he just did a launch review as well. which is basically something to do with like the metaverse and tokenizing artwork and everything like that. So that's finally launched. God bless him as well. So yes, like so much happening in Singapore. I know this is contrarian, but we are all excited for next week, but we are also dreading next week as well, because like there's just so much shit happening. Like I am personally confused. I Casey, your English is better than mine. What's after triple book? I've got no freaking idea what's after triple book. Is it quadruple book or like hexagonal?
Yeah.
Hexagonal booked and everything like that. There's just so much going on.
Amazing. That's incredible. Yeah, that's the thing with these big conferences. I think Token has definitely built a reputation as being like the kind of the bigger show, like doing a good job of marketing and things like that. But you are in Seoul right now. And could tell us, like, what do you see? Like, you went to Token last year, and you're in Seoul now, and you went to Seoul last year. What's the vibe? What did it? I see the speakers, a lot of them are similar. I think Korea did a good job. Let's put the show the week before, so people will come in from around the world and stay in Asia for at least 2 weeks. I've got meetings already from people coming to Hong Kong after Singapore, so they're just staying the whole month in Asia. But what do you see the vibe? What's the vibe like between Korea? We had the Korean blockchain guys on last week, and listening to them, it's like they're pumping their show. So I don't think I got a real sense of what it was like there. But you are the guy in the middle, so you tell us what you seeing over there now.
Well, I think Korea's is great. Like compared to last year, I think this year's vibe is very, very good. So one thing I would personally observe, which is there are actually two main conferences happening at Korean Blockchain Week. So first one's Impact. That's the one that just wrapped up yesterday. And then today is Gateway by NFT Now. So basically what happens is that one good thing I've seen is that you've got one that's really, really focused on more the crypto community side of things, and with a little bit of a mix of institutional content. And obviously with Ali and the rest of the boys, they're doing Gateway, right? That's very focused on not just NFTs, but and not just from the art, but also from the community perspective as well. So there's very nice separation. People kind of know what to expect. I think last year, what happened was that they tried to put everything within like 2 or 3 days, so it's a bit confusing. So basically, you've got that convergence of people, which is a great thing. But what happens is that you've got people who may not be on the same wavelength. Like crypto's a very diverse crowd now, right? It's not just people who are all more or less doing the same thing back in the ICO days. Now people are own different verticals, right? So it's always like the first thing I have in my mind is that great, I love to meet people who are in these different verticals, but I also want to meet people who are doing what I do, right? Or investors or other builders who are doing what I do. So I think now there's very clear emotional separation between both. I think the vibe was really, really very good. They had ice cream this year. It's like freaking hot in Seoul at the moment and everything like that. Thank God for air conditioning. Like Asia, air conditioning. You live in Hong Kong, I live in Singapore. Air conditioning, best invention ever. I'm sorry to all the globalists out there. The global environmentalists out there. But like, I think this year the difference is that you see a lot of people making a comeback in a good way, right? And that's the first thing I've noticed, right? People are less. Last year was very hopium, right? Everybody was looking for hope. I think this year everybody's like, fuck this shit, right? The market is whatever it is. I'm just gonna continue building, right? Or you know what? I'm gonna continue raising my fund, but I'm gonna manage expectations by maybe having a slightly smaller fund, right? But still look to deploy, right? You look at all the launches of the new layer 1s, layer 2s, layers, whatever it is. You didn't see any of that last year, right? You start to see, talk about GameFi, right? Start to see proper demos, right? In the past, it was all, like showing you like a character from Final Fantasy and like, I'm going to build a game around this guy, right? But you've got no idea what the game's going to look like. You're seeing demos and everything like that. Potentially, they could finally, I don't know, like people bullish about GameFi. I'm skeptical, to be honest with you. But like, you actually see demos of games and you look at it, and personally, I look at it, it's like pretty cool, right? There's quite a few people in gaming as well, right? I think that's pretty interesting as well. Like, P2P type of platforms as well. So there's a lot going on. Saw a lot of old friends this year compared to last year as well. So Korea's been great. Traffic's been shit, but Korea's been great.
That's
Yeah,
what
that's
everyone's
usually.
talking about, the traffic.
Sorry?
That's what everyone's talking about, the traffic.
No, see, because the funny thing is that most people stay in Gangnam, right? So this Korea's like two sides, right? There's Han River in between, right? So Shila's on the north, right? And most people hang out in the south in Gangnam. So basically, we're like crossing the bridge as if it's New York or something like that every day and everything like that. Yeah, but I'm in Dongdaemun, so it's kind of like a little bit easier and everything.
Last year, I remember seeing photos of like a flood, right? There was so much rain. People were like standing on cars
Dude,
because the
Korea
wall.
was like Korea was like the largest Olympic sized pool or something like that.
Wow, that's
That
crazy.
flood last year. But you know the funny thing about the flood? The flood was actually the one thing that became like iconic. Okay, like it screwed everything up, right? I think one crypto exchange tried to do a party in a basement and they literally canceled their party because obviously the flood and everything. So they basically, a kind of like a party became like a pool party, literally,
Yeah,
right? And like I don't know,
amazing.
half the people I think didn't want to go because they didn't want to get electrocuted or something. But like it was like really, really, really bad. But it was like it was the one thing. Like a lot of us was stuck at some dinners, so it really allowed some of us. I won't say it applied to everybody, but some of us, because we were stuck. I was literally stuck in a Korean barbecue restaurant from like 10 p.m. to 3 in the morning, right? But it allowed a lot of us to bond and
Yeah,
everything like that.
yeah.
Yeah, and that, if you actually ask me, that's probably the genesis of some of the first 50 to 100 members in ARC, actually.
Who would have expected the weather to be like to infect so much? It's amazing.
Mm,
Okay, so another question I have while you're there as well. So to me, Singapore and Hong Kong are very international cities in the sense that you can get around with English, right? Japan and Korea, I feel like English is definitely a second language, and you need to know the
yep.
local language. How does that affect? So, how do you feel the Korea Blockchain Week and the stuff you're seeing? Do you feel an international event? Do you feel a lot more Koreans are there? Like, how do you think that compared to like what we're going to see next week?
Yeah, so I think definitely token is going to be a lot easier, right? Generally speaking. But I think it's also a little bit unfair to say that, there is a language barrier. I think one good thing that crypto has brought, and Casey, you and I were from the, Web 1, Web 2 startup days and everything like that, right? And remember, like, guys, I'm going to go way back, right? I'm literally going back a decade, right? Remember we had those Japanese startups like come and pitch, for some of the events we used to do and everything like that, and none of them spoke English and everything. I think there's a bit lesser of that. I think Korea Blockchain Week is great that so you just speak from the Korea perspective, which of the Korean companies want to not just move out of Asia, but also probably expand their threshold, or their bandwidth or even their talent outside of Korea. Because these are the ones that put in the effort to speak English. I've actually met a couple of friends, right? And Korea Blockchain Week's been around 2018. In 2018, their English was shit, right? And this year is probably the first time, some of them was the first time I met them again because of COVID and everything like that. And suddenly talk to me and I'm like, okay, your English is better and everything like that. So it's not that bad. It's not that bad. Like the people who actually come to Korea Blockchain Week are people who want to meet people outside of Korea, right? So the English is a lot better, right? And I think that's also one of the things which I think I was very surprised. Crypto makes the world smaller. I always tell people that crypto makes the world smaller, regardless where you are. And it's slowly getting there.
Great.
Okay, that's good to hear. Okay, so I feel like that's a great layout on that. So let's talk a little bit about more what's happening in Singapore now, because I'm very excited to hear from you like what's going to happen. I'm excited to see what happens next year. So because of the pandemic, Hong Kong, as opposed to Singapore, closed their doors, right? There was all this
Yep.
quarantining going on, but Singapore
Yep.
was open. You could just, go in and business as usual. So a lot of people moved from Hong Kong and China to Singapore and Dubai, during this thing.
Yep.
Do you feel there's an influx of new people in Singapore in the last, like, in this year? Do you think people are still coming in? Do you think the ones that have came during the pandemic are still there? What's your vibe on how many more Web3 people have kind of moved into the city in the last, say, 12 months?
Hmm. Quite a bit, to be honest. I still see quite a bit of people moving in or have moved to Singapore. I just learned one of my friends, Alex from Circle, who's based in Taiwan, is actually moving into Singapore first week, next week, like of all auspicious, logistically nightmarish times. He's moving to Singapore. He's actually going to be moving to Singapore next week. Good luck to him. Um, you still see that influx, right? You still see that influx of people moving in, but at the same time, you also see people moving to, Dubai. Some of them have also checked out Hong Kong as well. Funny thing is that you've also got people who are, from the West, so to speak. Also, I call it the A/B test, right? Casey, one of our mutual friends, I just met her, Amanda Cassette, right? We were just having a very, lively debate yesterday with Ray about the pros and cons about, moving to Singapore versus Hong Kong. So I've kind of convinced her, for example, to do kind of like an A/B testing, 2 weeks in Singapore, 2 weeks in Hong Kong, and then we make the judgment after that. But other than that, yes, I have to say that a lot of people are moving to Singapore. The funny thing I say about it is that I think because Singapore's a good, I'm not saying anything bad about Hong Kong yet, but what I do say is that Hong Kong's Singapore. People just know where they stand with regards to Singapore. It's easy to travel around. That things work and everything like that. A lot of people will complain and say Singapore is boring. I will not deny that. But Singapore's boring for a reason because,
Yeah.
Singapore's boring for a reason. It's meant to be boring because you've got nothing else to do, so get to work, right? That's the unfortunate truth.
It's a business.
It's a business city, yeah, 100%. It's a business city, right? But coming from a guy who's lived in Bangkok and a little bit of time in Tokyo, and back in 2018 when I was organizing Korea Blockchain Week, I spent a few months here as well. Singapore just has that sanity. I guess people like that, right? And obviously, no capital gains tax, right? I think people love that as well, right? So that's the reason.
That's a big reason, actually. Okay, so I'm going to bring up this file here. Share. This is the Token 2049 side event listing. You can just find it. It's a spreadsheet. You can find it on their website. It's not a big deal.
There's 320 side events happening.
Yeah. No, there's more than that now. I think it went down to 380. Yeah. Well, so
Okay.
I'm looking at
Thank
this.
you, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for helping the Singapore GDP. We really, really appreciate your help and everything like that. When I was at the central bank, in 2021, one of the discussions we always had, now I can say it, is that okay, if with this influx of crypto, would they move the GDP of Singapore by 2%?
Right.
Yeah, I'm gonna share this with my ex-boss, and they're like, yeah, probably. This is your 2% right here.
Exactly. So that's not just okay. So a lot of people think they need to come down to Token 2049, buy a ticket. Alex, sorry, but you've started such a major thing in Singapore. Everybody just built their own show around your show because so many people are coming to town. So on this document, there's like a lot of free networking parties from different projects, trying to build a community. But there's also dinners. There's also other conferences happening at the same time.
Yes.
Like we talked about one that Karen and I are going to be at, the Growth Con at Marina Bay Sands on Sunday.
Yep.
So people are coming in early. There's probably a lot of different stuff here. I see there's one called Real World at the Swiss
There's
Hotel.
There's Ethereum Singapore that starts on Sunday as well.
Right. There's a lot of stuff going on. Now I want to be real here. How much of this actually happens at the rest of the year in Singapore? In Hong Kong, we had 3 Web3 conferences within 6 weeks of each other. So it was crazy. Earlier this year, like as soon as they opened the door to the quarantine, so many people rushed to do like events and stuff like that they've been waiting to do.
Yep.
I want to know, like in Singapore, how strong and robust is the community there that are just like hosting meetups, networking events, smaller conferences, builder conferences, hacker houses, things like that.
A bit hard to judge. I feel that there's always somebody out there doing a bloody conference. There's always somebody, especially in crypto, right? There's just so much happening, not just in Singapore, but in Asia as well, right? And no, I don't think I don't think any city anywhere in the world, right, would have 1 week like this that has that much stuff going on, even in SF, right? Which is supposed to be the heartbeat of tech entrepreneurship and everything like that. Like I know a lot of stuff goes on in SF in the Bay Area, but like even this, it's something that I've not seen. I mean, I've never seen that many side events in 1 week. I'm gonna be controversial and say that if we can, if the Web3 community can gather together and do so many meetups and everything, why do we need a conference? Like really, right? Why do we need a conference? But yeah, I think there's a lot of things going on as well, because there's just influx of so many types of people and personalities coming in, not just from the West, but also around Asia as well. So it's probably the time where you could capture a lot of face-to-face attention and time with people. So everybody's just hosting their little things, and look, to be honest, I think a lot of them it's also a more cost efficient way, right? I mean, how much are the sponsorships in token, right? And how much is it to buy a ticket to token, right? I use the same amount of money, and let's just say I'm not in the city area, I'm just slightly on the outskirts. Let's just, I don't know, say Bugis, for example, right? With a couple of nice laksa places, by the way, Casey, around there. And you could basically, like, you could book a bar for an entire night for like 20 grand Singapore, which is like 17 grand US, right? And you could capture the attention yourself and everything, and you have your community. And I think one good thing though I see about all these side events is that these people are confident that they have a community. Whether is it 50 people or 500 people, they have a community. Because if I'm not confident I have a community, I mean, Memeland is a very good example, right? If I'm not confident I have a community that's going to be in Singapore, I wouldn't host an event, right? Then I would have, suck it up. I would, pay 50 or 100 grand to sponsor token.
Amazing. I think it's interesting to have all these events on top of each other. But I think another piece of context, I don't know if the listeners understand, but so Token 2049 started in Hong Kong, right? It was very successful back in the ICO era. I think 2018, 2017, they did their first one. Then, of course, the pandemic happened, so they shut down. Singapore opened up, and I think they saw an opportunity. Plus, the F1 was happening. So the F1 is the anchor event for, I would say, Singapore, right? Would you say it's like one of the major events? Everybody comes in for this
it's become
event.
one of the major events.
Yeah.
Yep.
And also F1 is super popular now because of the Netflix show. Everybody wants to see F1. So all of Asia, all the world will come in. It's like the Monaco Grand Prix. Everybody comes to Singapore.
Everybody wants to see F1 for free.
Right.
That's why you've got Circle and OKX and the rest of the guy having handout suites.
Right. Good point. Yeah.
Everybody's hoping to snag an invite or something like that.
Yeah. And then, so because of that, so Token goes in the week before it. All these events happen before it. Then F1's on the weekend. I know Melkin is also there. Melkin is holding their annual event. It's non-crypto, but it's still tech-focused and very big. And then the week after F1 is the Super Return Conference, where all the limited partners, general partners, VCs are all get together. So all the biggest money people are going to be in Singapore because they lure them in with the F1 and have that. So that's why these 2 weeks in Singapore are very, very hyped up, and a lot of action is going on because it just happened to time it so perfectly together. So it's a very exciting time to be in Singapore for next week. What are you most excited about besides our event together? What are you most excited for? Do you have any big events that you think people should check out, or any talks, people coming to town that you think they should check out next week?
Wow. I don't know who's listening in. Some of them might be my friends organizing events, so it's going to be very hard to choose. I'm going to be politically correct for once. I think it really depends. I would think it really, really, really depends on what you want out of the week, right? Like if you're an artist or you're a musician versus you're a crypto trader, right? It's different. I think it's very, very different. I think it's also the case whereby people want to know who they can meet as well, right? So it really depends on where your interest, where your passion lies, and who you want to get connected to. Most of the protocols are running something, for example, right? So if I'm a builder, I'll be going to check out all these things out because I'll be looking at two things, right? I'll be looking see if I can, to be, very, 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 very transparent about it. I'll be looking for a grant, but I also want to check out the vibe of the ecosystem and everything as well, right? I want to see that if I'm going to be building on a particular chain, layer one, layer two, layer whatever, I'm have people like me who are building there, right? And see what they have to say, right? There are some people obviously that are very, very curious about new happenings in the space as well. So they might go to, one of the, exchanges or dexes, sexes and dexes type of events, right? Because they're looking for listings, they're looking for a connect to listings and everything. Maybe to give an example, so one of the things that ARC is doing is that we're actually doing a hot pot supper night on Monday, right, with our members. So it's like a pregame. The reason for that is that we know the week is absolute madness. We also know that people travel as a herd. You don't want to be that solo guy, just coming in and like, okay, where do I start and everything? Then it's kind of like speed dating in Texas or something like that, right? So basically what you want to do is that, we're trying to get people familiar, get people to kind of like ask each other, like, okay, which events are you going to? Why are you going there? Oh, that's great. Oh, I know the organizers there. Oh, I know the team there, everything like that. So it kind of makes the whole week a lot more easier to manage, rather than, having the thought that I've got to spend the next, I don't know, 100 hours, right? Just going around randomly, hoping I get lucky. So that's also one of the considerations as well, right? Any events I'm looking out for? Well, ours for sure. Yours, which you guys are also doing, the Pixelmon guys as well. Very excited for that one. Other than that, I think I don't know. I don't know what to expect. Honestly, I do not know what to expect next week. I don't know how people react to it. Hopefully the Singapore transport system keeps up with everything we're all going to be going on and everything. Yeah, but I think every event has its merit, and it really depends on what people want to see and everything like that.
Great, awesome. Okay, thanks a lot for being here today, Gab.
pleasure.
ARC Community is the project. Take a look at it. We're going to bring on our next guest. Do you want to stay here, or do you want to bounce? Do you have to bounce?
I'm gonna bounce.
Okay.
Bounce. But thank you very much, Casey, brother. Very nice. Look forward to seeing you in Singapore finally. We'll go for some laksa and everything like that. Karen, join us as well.
Yeah.
Look forward to having seen the both of you in Singapore finally. Yeah, Casey, it's been too long, man, brother.
I know it's been a long time. Awesome, man.
Too long, man. All right.
Okay.
Man.
See ya.
Guys.
All right.
ya.
Bye. Okay, wow, very exciting. I'm back on. Okay, that was interesting. I hope people got some insight out of that. Let's bring on our next guest. Oh, what happened to the thing? Oh, it's here. No. Oh, it's off the end.
Welcome.
Hey, hello. Can
Welcome,
you hear me?
Jeffrey. Hi. Yes, we can hear you clearly. So Jeffrey is the founder and CEO of Poco, a startup connecting Web3 infrastructure providers and DApps to payment methods for better use acquisitions and conversions based in Singapore. And he's an alumni of Y Combinator and raised 9 million seed rounds from Plug and Play and Good Water. So welcome, Jeffrey.
Hi, thanks for having me on the show.
So why don't you first tell us about how do you start this new Web3 company and what's the story?
Yeah, so as a background, we basically run this thing called Poco Cards at the moment. So it allows anyone to issue a MasterCard from their wallet or exchange account in 30 seconds. Very low fees and very easy setup. The history behind it was that I started my involvement in Bitcoin back in 2013, kind of a very unusual pathway. I just left Bain and Company to work at to basically set up this nonprofit that's training women entrepreneurs in North Korea. So it's a very weird place.
Wow.
There was a currency crisis there. They did a reform, and they basically were trying to expropriate the wealth of entrepreneurs. So I went back, talked to some people, and then they're like, oh, maybe we should look at this thing called Bitcoin. So I went to read the original white paper back in 2013. And then at the time, people are like, oh, you need to go to this place called Mount Gox to buy Bitcoin. And I was like, oh, this sounds like like a very, very difficult thing to use. But the concept was just amazing. So it kind of really stuck in my mind. Fast forward to 2017, I was kind of moving on from the nonprofit work. We had a very crazy year. With all the I think if you remember back in 2017, Trump and Kim Jong-un were threatening to go to war with each other.
Yeah.
So, we kind of managed to bring it through that tough period, and then I passed it on to my colleagues to run. And then I left to join this layer one protocol that's just starting out called Zilliqa. So, we were part of the parent company that launched Zilliqa. And it's a very interesting thing, kind of bring that protocol up to kind of like into the market. But what really excited me back then was that I wanted to see a world where we can use crypto for payments in our day-to-day life. And I was attracted to the project because they were one of the first to implement sharding. And at that time, high throughput was one of the critical elements in terms of competing with like your credit card rails. Did that, went to lead one phase of Project Ubin, which was led by the MAS, which is the Central Bank of Singapore, to experiment with implementing cross-border payments on blockchain rails. So I was at MAS doing that, learn a lot about the policy thinking around crypto and blockchain from the central bank perspective, learn a lot of technical aspects, and then move on to do some work with the World Economic Forum and the Ethereum Foundation. So as a fellow at both organizations, working on digital currency, and then went back to doing the startup stuff and founded Poco with the view of taking some of all that learnings and trying to figure out how we can actually use crypto in our daily lives, how we can spend it easily, how we can make it something that's relevant to people in terms of what they need every day.
Thanks, Jeff. Okay, first of all, that background behind you doesn't look like Singapore. Where are you right now?
Yeah, so I'm actually in Vietnam. So we have a sizable engineering team in Vietnam. I spend a lot of time with engineering. So I'm from Singapore originally. Our company is in Singapore. But one thing you find in the region is that a lot of builders, because Singapore is actually very expensive and it's gotten way more expensive post-COVID. So a lot of people choose to build their team, especially hiring engineers outside and kind of have a hybrid team just because it helps manage costs a lot better and it's a lot more scalable in terms of talent.
Yeah, that makes sense. How much time do you spend in Singapore as opposed to like Vietnam?
Yeah, I would say I spend maybe 15-20% of the time in Singapore.
Okay.
My family is there.
Wow.
So there's both personal and business reasons to be back there. But most of the time I'm building. We don't actually do I don't do a lot of community or marketing work. So most of the stuff is sitting with engineers, kind of boring stuff.
Okay, cool. Hey, I brought Ray up onto the stage because he has to go to a lunch with Gab later on. So I thought people probably want to say hi to Ray. So Ray, if you're there, just turn on whenever you're ready. I'm just talking to Jeff about building his company from Singapore and Vietnam and Asia. Jeff also is a YC alumni, so I don't know if everybody knows Y Combinator is probably the biggest accelerator. And you raised a lot of capital for your business in the States, right? Can you talk a little bit about raising money? I don't know if you closed that round this year or earlier, but talk a little bit about raising in the States, coming back to Asia. How difficult is it? Do you have a lot of challenges in this market, or is it something that people are excited about still?
Yeah, so we basically raised initial rounds actually primarily from Asia, and then we went through Y Combinator and post YC. Most of our raise was actually we raised through YC, which has been an amazing experience for me. I think they emphasize a lot of business building discipline. But I think obviously one of the huge advantages is that we got exposure to investors from around the world. And we actually raised from a lot of different regions just because we wanted to have access and kind of a sounding board in these different places. So even though most of the raise was through YC in the US, we had venture capitalists from Latin America, from Japan, from China, which were kind of key markets that we were trying to push our product into. And that was really, really helpful. In terms of the fundraise, we raised at the start of the year. So obviously it's a much, we closed at the start of the year. Okay. So it's obviously a much more challenging environment today. I think I honestly have to say we were, in some sense, very lucky in terms of, not at the peak of the fundraising kind of like craziness, but, at least, I would say startups today would face a lot more it's a lot more of a struggle to fundraise. I would say US at the end of the day is still a lot easier to raise just because you have such a deep pool of capital. You have, with investors is that, there is obviously a shift in thesis, in terms of how investors look at Web3. But you still have, I think, you just need to find a few investors, right, to get a startup off the ground. And when you have a lot of investors, in the US, you're more likely to get someone to cut your check. I think the other big challenge is that we find a lot of builders, especially migrating from China to Southeast Asia. And I think what they realize is that the income levels in this market and the size of the market tend to be a lot smaller. So a lot of people struggle to find a very sizable market to tackle with the startup.
Yeah, that's amazing. Okay, that's some great stuff I want to double back on. So you said your first checks from Asia. Are they first checks from Singapore or Asia in general, like around Asia?
Singapore, all the funds are domiciled in Singapore.
Okay, great. So
Southeast Asia's market.
So that means there's a lot of VCs still looking at this market right now in Singapore. How is it easier for you to raise in Singapore then as a crypto like late last year?
Yeah, I think so. We are because we raised our Asia fund before Y Combinator. So most of the funds that came in later were from the US side. So I'm not sure I'm like super up to date with fundraising out of Singapore. I mean, there are definitely still funds there that are actively looking to deploy, because we do get people from there wanting to speak, trying to see if we are fundraising, which we are not really actively doing at the moment. But there definitely are funds that are still out there trying to deploy. I would say though, I think for a lot of the mainstream funds that are not exclusively focused on Web3, I think they are a lot more cautious about deploying into Web3 projects. They want to see kind of real traction and revenues. I think a lot of money still tend to go into infrastructure, where the advantage there is that people don't have to deliver revenues fast, right? They're like, hey, it's going to be much further down the road. We don't issue tokens, but I think a lot of the investors tend to look at projects that have tokens just because they want to see a faster turnaround.
So you're just a good old-fashioned equity investment.
Yeah, we are old school. We are boring, and just trying to focus on the product.
Okay, so I don't know if you were listening to Gabe a minute ago. He's more like community building and stuff like that. You're building to start up. So I know a lot of startup founders, especially in this early stage, don't have a lot of time for socializing, things like that. But I always want to know, because we're in Hong Kong here, Karen and I, and also I host a lot of Web3 events in Hong Kong. Do you have a very strong founder ecosystem in Singapore when you go back? Do you have, because went to YC, as you can imagine, right? It's super intense. You're with hundreds of other super founders. Everyone's an alpha male or alpha female working hard on their project. But I feel like that is very, very good for the founder, right? Having this echo chamber, bouncing ideas off of people, just being a bit more in the scene. Do you find that Singapore, because you just heard all this crazy stuff that's happening for Token. Does Singapore have that community there? When we come down there, like say on a non-token week, can we meet with other founders easily? Are there ways to connect with people building there, or are they like you? They're just bouncing in and out of the city all the time, going somewhere else, things like that.
Yeah, so I think I'm part of a few communities in Singapore that have been amazing help to me. One is like this SG Crypto Builder community. I mean, it's a community in a Telegram group. They occasionally have meetups. So you'll find, I think, a good set. So I don't know how to compare Hong Kong, right? I've not spent time in Hong Kong, but I would say it's a decent community. There are people who are still actively building, and it's nice to have other founders who are in the same shoes, going through all the pains of an early stage startup, who you can get advice from, kind of get empathy from. I would say compared to the US, it's still I hate to say this, but I have a lot of Silicon Valley FOMO, where there's always this, we go through this period in time where we're, oh my god, we wish we were in the Valley. This is because I think the community there and the talent pool is so huge that you feel like you learn so much faster there. I think in Singapore, I would say, going back to my early days there when we were kind of doing Zilliqa, it's like I would say it's still a primarily trader crowd. A lot of people there are more traders. You find a lot of trader people want to trade crypto. Then you find actual builders. I would say it's grown over the years, and you can find a community there. But it's not it's not the same scale as being in the Valley.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
I'm using a notebook. Yeah, that's why I don't know whether you can hear me well. Yeah, I think I totally echo what Jeffrey just shared. Right, I think Silicon Valley FOMO. I think that's true, right? Especially coming from an Asian founder, right? Because when I was younger, right, and then I was reading like White Web and then Mashable and then TechCrunch and stuff like that. Right? You
Yeah.
always see like PG. They talk about okay, Y Combinator and stuff. It's almost like people say that YC is like the Harvard of like a startup accelerator, right? I mean, even though I study in like the top university in Hong Kong, I still want to go to Harvard. Right? It's kind of like that kind of feeling. Yeah. So I think that's very true. But at the same time, I feel like uh, 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 when we talk about the builders, the founders community, I think one thing which is kind of interesting is it depends on who you vibe with and talk to. Right? I think in Hong Kong, for me, I'm not very active in the Hong Kong startup communities because most of the Hong Kong founders that I know, they focus on the Hong Kong market or the Chinese market, right? Meanwhile, for us, when we were building NiGet, right, and right now Memeland, right, we always target the world, right? So that the crowd, the challenges that we face is a little bit different, right? That's why I can't find a lot of people that can share our challenges, right? That's why I'm close with like a Caseify, right? I'm close with like Hypebeast is because they're based in Hong Kong, but they are also targeting the world, right? Is that the case for you, Jeff, when you have to like continue to expand your company, right? Because I think for Singapore, I think it's a little bit different, right? Because there's no China, right, right behind Singapore. So basically, if you want to go bigger, you almost have to always target the Southeast Asia market. So do you find that all the founders that you know, are they more like having similar challenges, right, when you try to build up your company?
Yeah, I mean, I'll speak first about my experience, and then I'll talk a bit about some of the other builders we have met. So we initially started being like, hey, it's Web3. Web3 is global. We need to target the global market. The challenge is that we ensure people can connect to fiat payment rails, traditional payment rails a lot more easier, and that's a very local business, right? Because each country have very different payment methods, and you need to optimize for it. So we started having to narrow it down into kind of like focusing on a few key markets where we can kind of deliver a much better project. And actually, most of our users are coming from Chinese-speaking users, coming from, I think, the Greater China region. That's actually a very big community that we have, or from other places, but very much linked to that community using our cards. So we kind of had to optimize a little bit. And I think the other big issue was time zones. So we were doing a lot of work with LATAM and US clients initially from Asia. After a while, you find your team burns out quite, you can do it for one whole year, spend every night speaking to people until midnight or 1 a.m., but you still cannot deliver as fast as a competitor in the US or in LATAM, because they have another 5-6 hours of working hours that they can communicate with customers, fix problems. So those are, I think, very practical problems trying to grow global, operating out of just a very different time zone. I think within the region, the challenge I think in Southeast Asia is that I think the crypto market is a bit different, right? So a lot of people there, they don't spend as much on crypto, but they're looking a lot for like airdrops, for free stuff, which kind of leads to very different models and different ways of engaging. And so depending on the kind of business you're doing, it's very different. So I think that's from our experience, what we found. I would say we've actually met a lot of Chinese founders that moved to Singapore after COVID ended. And then what they found was that one is obviously crypto prices going down. Cost in Singapore was like skyrocketing after COVID because so much wealth was moving into the country. And then we see a reverse flow where many of them are moving back out to back to Hong Kong or the mainland to build there, just because the costs have gone up. So I think you see a bit of a mixed thing, and I think the challenge for them is that they go there and they realize like Southeast Asia is not one market. It's Singapore, Malaysia, Indonesia, and each of this market have just totally different environments. And it's not always easy to build across especially if it's a product that has regulation affecting it. But I think you might know a lot more about that than I would.
Well, I actually don't know that much, right? But I totally agree with you that I think for any foreigners, yeah, they always see Southeast Asia as one market, right? Because they are so used to it, right? US is like one market, right? And then even for Europe, right? People see Europe as one market because they basically most people, they speak English in Europe, right? Meanwhile, in Southeast Asia, the culture, the language, right, they are all so different, right? Especially, I think in general, I think it's really, really hard to compete really well in Southeast Asia if you don't have the local roots to local team to support it, right? Because I think unlike most of the European countries, I think Asians are generally fucking hardworking, right? But also very competitive, right? That's why when you are like a external company trying to compete, like in Vietnam or in like Thailand, right? You actually face a lot of local competition. That's why even as cool as Uber, right? They couldn't really make it work, right? In Asia. That's why Grab, they kind of like took the market, right? And I think stuff like that is actually very, very interesting coming from a guy who are born and raised in Hong Kong. When we look at the Southeast Asian market, right? That's why I feel like it's very challenging, right? But one good thing about this is, okay, when you kind of like make a name in the West, then Southeast Asia will also pay attention to you, right? Because it's almost like the same kind of like the West FOMO, that kind of stuff. When you kind of like brand yourself as like a more like a global project, right? People actually have more confidence in your project, even though you are exactly based in like Singapore or Hong Kong or something like that. Is that what you feel when you build Poco?
Yeah, I think the tricky thing is that in the US, income levels are a lot higher, right? So when we were doing initially, we started out doing payments for Web3 games, and then what we found was that we basically say, hey, look, it's a global community. We're going to offer all this 100 payment rails, very localized rails that people actually use in developing markets. So you see some decent volume from places like Brazil, from Philippines, but I would say like 80-90% of the volume for most of the projects was still US, Europe on credit card rails. So like I think that's the challenge, right? When you build, like the reason why US companies, when they look at Southeast Asia, and they're like, hey, do we spend the engineering resource to build for the market? You always run into this problem in a big company where they're like, hey, but 95% or 90% of my revenue is coming from US. Like why do I want to prioritize Southeast Asia's market? So I think that's the big challenge. I think every US company struggles with it. So it's hard to beat a focused competitor in the region just because, for like, if you look at Facebook, right? Facebook probably gets like 10%, 5% of the revenue from Southeast Asia. So they have like, great, right? They have a lot of users here. But from a corporate perspective, you're going to have some CEOs going to look at it and say, hey, why are we spending all these engineering resources on that market when 90% of our revenue is coming from this other markets? So I think that's always the tension I think companies face, maybe more at the later stage. At early stage, you just kind of like find a niche, build for it, hope they like it, and then you figure out how to scale from there.
Well, yeah, agree. Yeah. By the way, when I know that you're coming to GM show, right? I check out Poco app.xyz, right? And then I see that when you have the off-ramp part, right? You actually have a US company, right? And then the fund is actually held by a US bank as well, right? Is that like intentional to give out more trust, right, to the market, right? Yeah, because of that.
Yeah, actually, you touch on an amazing point. Thanks actually for bringing it up. So what you see is that the challenge in Singapore as a builder too is that your ecosystem for say fintech or other kinds of tech, the layers are not as well established. So the reason why we build in the US, and one is trust, obviously, but two is just that there's amazing base of APIs and fintech providers or banking as a service providers to work with. The APIs are all built out. You go in there, their products are it's amazing. And it's just like, you can build and launch things so much faster than in Singapore. You have to go talk to a bank, and especially if you're doing Web3 stuff, you go talk to the bank, they're going to get a lot of questions. Not that in the US, it's easy to do that either. You still have to prove like a process, compliance and all that. But it's just that there are 3,000 banks in the US. There are like 3 main local banks in Singapore. It's based on oligopoly. And you're going to try to persuade 3 banks at very profitable enterprises because it's oligopoly. Like DBS is one of the highest return on equity bank in the entire world. Actually, I think it's the highest. So you say, hey, you want to take a risk on this product. And then they're going to say, hey, my regulator is going to come down on me. I'm so profitable now. Why do I want to build APIs for you to touch my banking system? Stay out of it. Whereas in the US, you probably will find a few banks that are going to say, hey, this is interesting. It's a path to growth. Let's give it a try. And I think that's the difference of the beauty of being in a big market.
This is actually a great insight, right? I think it's almost the reason, right, or the beauty of Web3 when there is like enough competition, right, enough decentralization, you actually can make things better, right? I think this kind of like touched on the reason why Bitcoin was started, right? And it's also kind of like echoing right now when we talk about Web3. I think people think, okay, Web3, the user experience sucks, right? Why do I have to focus on, why do we have to use Web3, right? But the thing is, when everything's become so big, right, then basically they don't really look for new improvement, right? They don't look for kind of like new innovation that quickly, right? And I think it's the same case, right, for ecosystem that's like so sophisticated, right? That's why, for example, the banking system in Singapore, the same kind of ecosystem in Hong Kong, right? It's basically they're so good because they make money so well. That's why they don't need to work that hard, right, to introduce like new stuff, right? I mean, although like some banks, right, in Hong Kong, they talk about building metaverse and stuff, right? But their e-banking website is shit, right? I think it's stuff like that that makes me look forward, right, to all the new innovation in Web3. It's not just because, okay, people can make money there. It's actually, okay, you can use this new innovation to push I would say, the existing player to do better, right? And if they feel the fear, if they feel the threat, right, they actually have to hire those guys, right? So I totally feel like anyone building in Web3, they actually have a great prospect in their career. Because I mean, even though Web3 right now is kind of like suffering, right? But somehow all the infrastructure, all the stuff that you learn and build, actually most of the traditional company, they want to do that. They need to do that in 3 years, 5 years. So even if you start a company and fail, right, you probably can land a head of product job at like a traditional bank in 2 years. Yeah. So I think something like that makes a lot of sense, right? And I think the problem that you're working with is actually very, very interesting because I was having some meetings with some Hong Kong government official, right? They always ask me, hey, Ray, how can we make Hong Kong better for the Web3, right? I was like, can you make it easier to convert crypto into fiat, right? And also vice versa, right? I mean, that's it, right? I think Jeff, right? What you're building is actually what's needed in most of the countries if they want to embrace Web3. Is that what you feel like? Is that the opportunity?
Yeah, I think it's funny, right? Because when like initially when we were bouncing on ideas, everyone's like, oh, let's do crypto payments. Then you realize like a lot of people don't want to pay for stuff in crypto. You know, it's like kind of weird, right? Like go buy a bond or a security, and I say I want to use that security, go buy stuff. But I think it's that seamless. Like so, you know, we ended up focusing a lot on cards and the MasterCard Visa rails, mainly because that's still the most convenient way in most countries to pay. But how do you ensure that assets move seamlessly and as far as possible as low cost between those rails? I think it's super important because you know, if I am being taxed 5-6% by my payment processor just to use a stable coin to buy a coffee, you know, it's just not a great tool, right? It doesn't serve most people. It might serve people who are very, very deep into the culture, but then you want it to be something that everyone can use every day. And I think that's the thing that we try to solve for. I mean, Hong Kong is super interesting, right? I'm actually going there the following week. You know, there's a lot of talk about the encouraging signs they are making towards Web3. But I think it's super interesting to have that comparison between Singapore and Hong Kong in terms of where how we can support the Web3 community.
Yeah, go ahead, Casey. Yeah.
No, I just wanted to I wanted to definitely, we're going to definitely meet Jeffrey when he's in Hong Kong, but I'd love to hear your, what you see and what you hear here. And is it good for your company and good for what Web3 builders need? Because I'd like to hear an outside person actually building in Southeast Asia and seeing what's happening in Hong Kong.
Yeah, I think the whole thing about Web3 right now, I think is actually very, very, I would say, Asia friendly in a way, right? Because in the past, when Jeffrey, when you mentioned that, for example, even like Facebook, right? I think maybe like 5 or 10% of revenue coming from Asia, right? But the thing is, in crypto, in Web3, when you build and make it work, you actually don't have to care where your users are from, right? Because I mean, if you are a GameFi company, right, basically everyone can be your user, and then you generate revenue, right? We are like some transaction fee. Then basically, where your users are from, it doesn't matter. Same case goes for SocialFi, right? Because okay, people who love influencer, right? As long as you pay for their ticket, right? You pay for their limited editions, right? then actually it doesn't matter where they are from. I think stuff like that is why you can see that there's like a very vibrant community and a lot of builders in Asia in Web3. I was at NFT Now, the so-called VIP party yesterday night, right? And then the first comment that I had when I was talking to Gabe was, hey, NFT is not that, right? Because they're like a super huge crowd, so many hot guys, hot girls, right? I mean, hot girls part, I don't know why, right? Because all the people I see in Web3 is like I like dudes, right, online, right? So there's so many hot guys, hot girls, and stuff, and then artwork, and then you hear people talk about how to disrupt finance industry, art world, and then entertainment and stuff like that, right? It seems like Web3 is not even that, right? It's not so vibrant. Yeah, I think stuff like this, it's just like on one hand, the crypto price matters a lot. The price kind of like affects people's emotion a lot. That's why they feel like it's dying, right? But at the same time, I think the mainstream media is also not helping, right? And when you look at the mainstream media, who's the biggest funder, right? Who's the biggest like advertiser of the mainstream media? It's usually traditional banking. It's usually the players that you want to disrupt, right? I'm not saying that there's like conspiracy theory, but in general, I think most of the traditional media is not very friendly to Web3, right? So this is also one of the reasons why we have the GM show, so that we can own our own voice, right? Yeah, but I think for Jeff, right? I think what would be the biggest challenge that you have right now, right? And also, what's the biggest opportunity that you see right now? Yeah. By the way, I have to go right after this. Yeah, but yeah, I would love to hear your answer, Jeff.
Yeah, I think for us is I think the challenge with what we find with Web3 personally is that there's a lot of noise in the space, right? There's hype cycles. There's a lot of volume, honestly, that we think is not real volume. There's a lot of like wash trading and so on. So those noise, the challenge as a founder, you're trying to make decisions, right? Say where for me is like I want people who have a real use case. They need to solve a problem. But if those problems are manufactured, they're not like something that has a strong fundamental, then you end up building for the wrong things, because you're like, oh, maybe some protocol comes up and they're like, hey, we have so much trading volume on it. And then you're like, okay, where is the real volume, right? And then you really dig down. Are there actual users? What are users using it for? Those things are things that, you need to kind of cut through the noise to figure out like, is it a real use case? Does it help people? What does it help them for? And I think that's for me the one of the biggest challenge, because you have to actually make day-to-day decisions, and those affect the company, affects the employees, affects our runway. So I think making sure that we actually understand what's going on, and that there's a real use case. I think that's the most critical thing.
Great. Last but not least, I want to ask, if you're in Singapore, what are the top places that we should go visit or eat?
Okay, I was listening on the discussion about laksa before this. I am a big fan of laksa. So I love this area called Siglap or Geylang. It's on the west side of Singapore. It's a bit more gritty as a district. Famously, Singapore is very prudish about a lot of things, but they actually have legalized prostitution. And Geylang is an area that's known for that, but also known for
what?
Wow.
It is known for amazing food. Talking about the food, not talking about the other stuff. But so I recommend going there. Very local, and amazing food there. So that's my recommendation.
I'm glad Singaporean people like laksa too. Everybody from my friends in Hong Kong say, I can't wait to eat the Hainan chicken rice. But I'm like, that's not that good. The laksa is like very, very amazing. It's like the Singaporean ramen version, right? It's got the special broth, and it's just delicious.
It's amazing. I love spicy food, so that's on top of my list.
Okay, Jeffrey, I could talk to you for another hour. I find you fascinating. I also find your energy amazing. As a builder in the space, you're like super into what you're doing. I'd love to see and love to hear your insight. So definitely, let's see each other in real life when you come to Hong Kong in a couple of weeks.
Got it.
We'll go for dim sum.
Yeah, we'll take you for dim sum. We'll show you we'll find some spicy dim sum for you.
All right.
Thanks
for having me on the show.
Okay. See you later. Bye.
Well, thank you, Gabe and Jeffrey. We'll see
Wow.
you guys next week live in Singapore.
I know, crazy. With Ray as well, we're all going to be there. I know we always have technical problems. There's always something wrong with the show. We're not really official professional audio engineers, which is definitely something we're going to have to get in the future. But we're going to try and do a live event next week in front of a live studio audience. So who knows what that's going to be like, but we're going to have very, very, very special guests. It's going to be, I think it's going to be very something special. So we've have a small audience of mainland holders, right? I think they're coming, and a couple of VIPs will show up for this, but we're going to try our best. It will be, as usual, streamed on YouTube and Twitter Spaces as normal. So if you are not in Singapore or can't join us, you can definitely hear the show. Definitely tune in for that, because you'll see if the dynamic's different, right, Karen? I mean, we're both in Hong Kong, but we're not in the same room, so we're kind of like just on a fancier Zoom call, right? So I always want to see what it's like doing it like a panel, like a live panel. Oh yeah, I hope they film our panels in Singapore so that we can also share it or show some clips to people the week after. Because I mean, the week after we come back, we're definitely going to do a Singapore debriefing. So take a lot of photos and videos, and so we can show people what it looked like. I think it's very important to see, how big this event is, and how, like, when Ray talked about, like, Ray, we should maybe just talk to Ray about it, because he's in Korea, and to have him say, like, I can't believe how many people are into Web3 still in Korea, and how exciting it still is. I think a lot of people need to hear that and need to see that. And that's why I was very impressed to see that all these big American name brands like NFT Now, Pudgies are coming, everyone's coming down to talk about what's going on and kind of blow up the scene and make sure everybody knows it's still building. There's still excitement in it. Having Jeffrey talk, I don't know about you, but I when I talk to some Web2 founders, they don't even sound that excited about what they're building, right? I know he's still new, but I can just see the energy in there, and I really want to encourage that. I'm glad Ray also sees that too, and I think that's something that we really want to make sure it comes across in the show. It's just the excitement of building in Web3, and just don't look at your bags and look at the prices and the floor prices and stuff, and just look at that. Like Ray said, the one thing Ray said, which is true in Web 1, Web 2, if you're building in Web3, even if your startup doesn't take off, you're still going to be a very valuable asset in the coming years in the world of business. So I think it's very exciting to be learning as much as you can. So very exciting.
And I think this market is a great opportunity to connect with people. It's the time to network around and really see who are the people that are still in the market. These are the people that are staying and not going away. So make sure you make all your networking and all your events and
and also on top of that, I just want to also I agree. Like reading Twitter and seeing people LFG or whatever, it's good, but it's not going to be being there with real people. And learning what they're building and seeing the excitement for some, new project or new layer one or new token, whatever people are building, just to see the excitement around that. It can only be done in real life. And I feel like this is one, Korea, and then also there's a show in Tokyo, the Decentral are doing a Tokyo show as well in a couple of weeks as well. So there's lots of stuff going on, but just get out there, and definitely if not in Asia, you should definitely come out to Asia and just see what the excitement level is like here, because really it is it is night and day between some parts of the world and Asia in terms of Web3. So we're very excited.
If you're not coming next week, there's also November if you're going to be in Hong Kong. So let's see.
What's happening November?
Yeah, big stuff. That's where Ape Fest is happening, but we're also having our own event, our Meme Land event. And there's also a lot of things happening around November in Hong Kong. So make sure if you're not coming to Singapore, maybe Hong Kong is your next trip.
Yeah.
So thank you, everybody, this week. Follow us on Twitter, GM Show Official. And thanks to, actually, if you're not following OX Gringo, you can follow him for posting great recaps of each episode of this show on Twitter.
Thank you, OX Gringo. Yeah, amazing.
Follow him if you don't want to read or if you don't want to
listen to an hour and a half of talking. Yeah.
Exactly. So thank you, guys, and we'll see you next week in Singapore.